Are you looking for the best budget travel backpack? In this video, we're going to compare the BAGSMART Blast Expandable Backpack to the BAGSMART Faro Backpack, and we're going to see which comes out on top. So let's get started. First, let's talk about dimensions. Looking at the Blast backpack, this backpack expands from 28 liters to about 38 liters. So it works as a carry-on item for most airlines, but in terms of a personal item, this is one bag you really want to double check the dimensions on before you fly. I did just use it with Allegiant Airlines and had no problem with it. However, it did take up most of the room under the seat, so it is something just to be aware of. So in terms of dimensions, you're looking at in inches, 12.2 times 16.5 times 8.1 inches. And then expanded, you're looking at very similar dimensions, just slightly different. So 12.2 times 16.5 times 10 inches. And then looking at the Faro backpack, this backpack is 29 liters. The dimensions for the Faro backpack are 11.4 inches times 7.5 times 17.4 inches. And it should work as a personal item for most airlines. However, again, it is very important to just double check the dimensions before you fly, because this backpack, when fully packed, may or may not work for some airlines. So just always double check. And the nice thing about this is it does come with a little pouch. This pouch is 1.5 liters, and you can either use it as a crossbody bag when you're going through the airport, or you can remove the crossbody strap and just use it as a pouch within the backpack. So while this giant zipper is great because the bag is quite large and it will fit like a cell phone, passport, etc., I kind of get annoyed by the fact that A, the strap's not the most comfortable, and B, these outer pockets really don't zip or anything, so you can't really put anything in them, and just overall it doesn't feel that organized for me. So I prefer to use it inside the bag, and I just stick toiletries in here, and it just gives me a bit of extra organization. But you do have the strap if you do want to use it as a crossbody. So in terms of size, I've had these bags for about a month, and I find that I grab them for very different things. I prefer the Faro for going to the beach or running quick errands. But in terms of travel, I tend to veer more toward the Blast backpack. So if I'm gonna be out all day working at a coffee shop and then going to yoga and running around town, this bag for me, I feel like is just a bit more organized. And it's the same vibe with travel. I prefer all of the extra little pockets that this bag has compared to the Faro. The great thing about both of these bags is that they are water resistant. However, they are made out of different materials. So the Blast is made out of nylon and the Faro is made out of encrypted polyester fabric. And I did test both of these. I poured some water on both of them. They do resist the water really nicely. However, the main difference I've noticed is the zippers. While they both have SBS zippers, the main difference you're gonna notice right away with the zippers is that the teeth on the Blast backpack are quite wide, and it's just like a typical zipper. So what happens is when this bag gets wet, a lot of the water is going to soak up on that seam where the zipper is and through the zipper, which means you do see a bit of water leakage with the Blast backpack. The nice thing I love about the Faro backpack is you're going to notice right away there's a coating on the zipper, so it keeps the water out of the bag. So if you're worried about water soaking through, the Faro is definitely going to be your better option. However, that said, I do find that the zipper on the Blast backpack just is a bit easier to zip and unzip compared to the Faro. And to be fair, I've only had this for a month, so maybe after more use, it'll soften up a bit. You kind of have to pull a bit harder with a bit more effort to get this zipper to move back and forth. So it's not a huge issue, but I do think it's just something to be aware of depending on, what your preference is. So let's talk about a couple other similarities these bags have, starting off with laptop compartments. Both bags do have a laptop compartment. Both of them are located in the back of the bag. And each bag does fit the same size laptop. You're looking at a 15.6-inch laptop sleeve on either bag. And it is worth noting that there is no padding at the bottom of the bag or at the bottom of the laptop sleeve, which does go all the way down to the bottom of the bag. Personally, I'm very cautious with my laptop, so for me, that's one thing I wish would have been done a little bit differently on both of these bags. A little bit of extra padding on the bottom would have been really nice. But again, not the end of the world, especially at this price point. I don't think you can really complain too much about it. I do prefer the laptop compartment on the Blast bag a bit better than the Faro. However, I have noticed some people switch, in the comments and prefer the Faro laptop compartment over the Blast one, and we'll get into all of the details why as we examine each bag, but just something to be aware of. The other similarity that these bags have is that they both have water bottle compartments. So you can see off the bat, they are slightly different. The water bottle compartment on the Faro is entirely elastic, which really gives a lot of, well, give when you squeeze your water bottle in, versus the Blast backpack, which is made mostly out of nylon, but does have this elastic bit up here, just to give you a bit of space to squeeze in that water bottle. Both of these are meant to accommodate up to a 40-ounce water bottle. However, personally, I don't use a water bottle that big. I always use my Swell bottle. So just to give you kind of a comparison on the two, first we'll start with the Faro. This one is a bit deeper, as you can see. And for me, with the Swell, it doesn't even go all the way up to the top. But that said, even though it is like slightly loose in here, I've never had any issues with it falling out. And then looking at the Blast backpack, this one I actually prefer the fit on a bit better. You can see it's not quite as deep. And I like that on this one, I can strap it in just for a bit of added security, because I do think if I was flying with this one and had the water bottle in, pulling it like in and out of under the seat, I could see maybe the Swell bottle sliding out, versus this one where it's just a bit more secure, even though there is, you can see quite a bit of space on the outside. Now that we've talked about most of the similarities between these two bags, let's dive into a little private tour of each of them so you can get an in-depth look and see which one's gonna work best for you. One of the first things you're gonna notice about the Faro backpack is that the BAGSMART logo on this bag is a lot more obvious than it is on the Blast backpack. While it doesn't really bother most people, personally, I prefer a nice small logo, which is one reason why I tend to gravitate more toward the Blast. However, it is worth noting that in this shade, the white logo is actually pretty low key compared to some of the other colors that the Faro comes in. I think the black bag has like a turquoise logo, and the orange, I think maybe has a black logo if I'm remembering correctly. So they're a little more like obvious compared to this shade, which is a little more low key. So starting off, there's this large front pocket right here. It's large enough to fit a Kindle, and it's a nice deep pocket. There's no interior organization. However, it is worth noting that because it's not really much of a pouch pocket, what ends up happening is, depending on how much you have in the main compartment will eat up into the amount of space that you're gonna have in this front pocket. So depending on how much you pack, this front pocket can be a little tight to get in and out of. Jumping up to this front pocket, you can see there's a bit more organization in this one. You've got a couple pen pouches as well as two larger pouches right here. And then this pocket also goes quite deep. So if you wanted to, you could easily fit a Kindle in here as well. You can see it goes all the way down to this bottom seam. Lifting this bag back up, the other nice feature is that these little elastics on the front can be used to kind of lock the bag. So you just put the zipper string through there, and then it just gives you a bit of extra protection as you're walking around, just in case somebody would try to steal something. The main catch with this though is that it only works for this top pocket. This bottom pocket doesn't have one of those little elastics. I already talked about the water bottle holder. And then there's also these little compression straps. These are on either side. You can see they're nice and adjustable, pretty standard. Also got one on the bottom. Moving on to the other side, you're gonna see there's a nice grab handle. This is the largest grab handle on a backpack I have ever seen. It's, as you can see, incredibly wide, obviously very easy to grab. I do want to point out there is a little hidden pocket just right here. So if you want to hide your passport, your wallet, you can unzip it. It's quite wide and it's just right here. It goes basically from this side of the bag over to here and then down. And then jumping to the back of the backpack, you can see there's some nice mesh padding on both of the straps as well as the back of the bag. You've also got this trolley sleeve right here, which is pretty basic. And then you've got a sternum strap. Personally, I find this bag to be fairly comfortable walking around. However, I do think walking around with it for more than like a couple of hours, I could see these maybe getting a little bit uncomfortable, depending on what you're wearing underneath them. And then jumping into the laptop compartment, which we've kind of already talked about. This laptop compartment only zips about halfway down, and there's good padding on the back, good padding on this side. However, on the bottom of the bag, there's very minimal padding. So again, like we talked about, just make sure you're putting your laptop in a protective like sleeve before you're putting it into the laptop sleeve, just for a bit of extra protection on the bottom. Or what you could even do is maybe just put like a t-shirt or something on the bottom, just to give it a bit of extra padding, just in case, again, you would maybe drop the bag or something happens to the bag. It just, you know, gives you a bit more peace of mind. One more thing to note with the outside of this bag before we jump into the inside is that on the bottom, there is a little shoe compartment. So you can see there's little vents just in case your shoes are wet or maybe a little bit smelly. And you can see it fits, like, it goes quite deep. I'll show you when we get into the inside of the bag. It actually goes like all the way up to here. So you can fit a good sized pair of shoes in here. But again, the one compromise with that is you're taking up space on the inside of the bag. So let's zip this up and we'll jump into the interior. So jumping to the inside of the bag, one thing I really like is that it's a clamshell opening. And looking at this part first, you can see there's two little zippered compartments. The mesh part here is really great because it's kind of like a pouch. You can see there's really a bit of give, so you can fit a good amount in here. And then this smaller section, I really like that it's not see-through. I find it perfect to put in personal items. So that way when you're undoing your bag, if you've got to take stuff out during security, nobody's looking at anything personal. And jumping to this part of the bag, you can see it's quite deep. A little compression strap here. And this part here, this is the shoe bag. So as you can see, it really takes up a lot of space in the bag. So I think when you're packing, it is important to be really mindful of the shoes that you're sticking in here because they are going to possibly take up a lot of the interior space. I think they work really well if you're putting in like flip-flops or, you know, maybe slippers, things like that, like a nice pair of flats. I think you'll be fine and then you can kind of pack around it. But if you're putting boots and things in here, it's gonna take up a lot of space very quickly. And just behind here, you can see like a good amount of space. What I've noticed is a lot of people, when they pack this bag, will put their packing cubes or clothes just folded in here and then put the shoes kind of on top. I think it's personal preference. However, I do think that's probably gonna be the best way to pack this bag. It seems like it's maybe just a little bit easier to squeeze everything in when you pack it that way versus having the shoes on the bottom and then trying to squeeze stuff on top. In a little bit, you're gonna see what I mean. So that is the Faro backpack, and now we're gonna jump over to the Blast. Starting off with the front of the Blast backpack, you can see there are 3 outer pockets. The first one is right here, and I already have it unzipped, there we go. Is right here, it's just a nice little pouch. It goes down to about here. And I find it fits like a Kindle very easily. Anything that you might need quick access to, very easy. And then just behind it, there's another like bigger pocket here. So if you have like a book or something a little bit larger, it fits in quite nicely. Again, it's kind of the same as the Faro. Depending on what you have packed on the interior, it does kind of tend to eat up a bit of the like space that the pockets are able to provide in the front. So just something to keep in mind when you're packing. And then the pocket that I'm really obsessed with this bag, that honestly just sold me on it entirely, is this top pocket here. There we go. So you just unzip it like this, it pops up. I actually have a couple things already in here. And you can see there's this nice mesh pocket here with a little zipper. So I've got my headphones and my sleep mask in here for my last trip. I find this to be so helpful because when this bag is under the seat, you don't have to rifle through everything to get something out. You can easily just unzip this top part and reach whatever it is that you might need during the flight. So I find it to be honestly so well designed in that regard. And then you can see I've also got like a sunglasses case. What else is in here? Oh, and my hairbrush. So this top pocket really does fit quite a bit. And again, this for me is the main selling point with the Blast backpack, because like, just imagine, this bag is under the seat, you want something out of the bag, and ideally you've packed it correctly that you're not gonna have to go into any of these other pockets. You don't have to worry about sliding it out. You can easily just unzip it. You really don't have to stress too much about something falling out of the bag as you're unzipping it, because it only unzips about halfway, but just enough that you're gonna be able to see what's in the pockets. You can grab whatever you want, zip it back up, and you really don't have any stress. That for me, again, main selling point on this bag. Really obsessed with that pocket. And you can see there's also a nice grab handle on the top. Onto the sides, we've talked about the water bottle compartment. We've also got compression straps on this bag as well. To me, these compression straps for some reason feel a little bit sturdier than the ones on the Faro. To be honest, I feel like just to do like a side by side, they're quite similar, but for some reason, I think maybe it's just the size. These just feel a little more like cinchy than these tend to. Looking at the other side, you can see there's compression straps again on either side. There's also a grab handle, which again, quite padded. And just behind that grab handle, there's another little hidden pocket. So it's big enough to put a passport, wallet, whatever. Basically, it goes from over here to about over here and down. So you're really looking at a good amount of space in that pocket. So looking at the back of this bag, you can see there's mesh paneling again, and then there's also another little hidden pocket right here. So looking at it, it goes basically to about here and then down to about here. And it's a good amount of space. Again, enough space easily to fit a passport, a wallet, whatever it is you want to hide. And then looking at the straps, you've got a sternum strap right here, which comes in very handy because this bag can get heavy very quickly if you're not careful. It does fit a lot of stuff. And then you've also got this luggage strap right here. So you can put this on the trolley of your roller bag if you have a roller bag with you. The best things about this bag is it is expandable. So if you look right here, there's a little expansion section. We're just gonna unzip it all the way around. There we go. And you've gone from having this much space to adding an extra like inch or two just to give you, a little more room if you go shopping, whatever. It's very handy. And again, very easy to, once this bag's packed, if you need to kind of cinch it in to get it into the sizer. As long as it's not like overly packed, I have found that it's fairly easy to just force that zipper and bag closed and just compress things a little bit easier. One other thing to look at before we dive into the inside is going to be the laptop compartment, which we've again kind of already talked about, but let's just go into it a bit deeper. I do prefer this laptop compartment over the one on the Faro because it does open all the way out. And I find the laptop compartment just to be a little more organized. So over here, you've got some netting where you can put things. Typically, I'll throw my mouse in one, a couple cords in the other. But you will notice that when this bag is packed, it does kind of eat out into that space a little bit. So these pouches can become quite tight to squeeze things into, depending on how much is on the interior of the bag. And then looking at the laptop sleeve, you can see there's a little divider. So you could very easily put your Kindle in this and then put your laptop in this. The one catch with this is, again, at the bottom, there's not a ton of padding. I do think there's more padding in the bottom of this one than there is in the Faro. But again, I would just keep your computer in a separate case before you put it into the laptop sleeve, just to give it a bit of extra protection. And to be honest, this is something I do with every single backpack I have, whether or not it's one of these or one of the other backpacks I have. I just, for security, always feel like a laptop should be in a case before you put it in your bag. Diving into the inside of this bag, one thing I really like is the way it opens. It opens kind of like a duffel bag. So we're just gonna open it up like this, and then just fold it up so you can see it. Start with this top pocket. So this top pocket is kind of like a nice plastic material, which is awesome because if you're like me and maybe you want to get in one last swim on your trip before you head to the airport, this is ideal because you can throw in a wet swimsuit, you can put in toiletries, whatever, and you don't have to stress about it leaking into the rest of the bag. It's just, honestly really well designed for that reason. And looking at this part of the bag, again, we do have that shoe compartment on the bottom of the bag. So again, there's like a nice little vent, and you can see it is quite a big shoe compartment again. So what ends up happening is it does go quite a bit into the bag. This bag is a bit deeper than the Faro, which means you don't really have to stress as much about the shoes taking up that much needed space because there is a bit more space in this bag. That said, again, you do just want to be mindful. If you're packing a pair of boots, it's going to definitely take up more space in the bag than if you're packing flats or sandals. At the side of the bag, there's no other compartments or anything. It's just a nice open compartment with that shoe bag inside. And then you've got little compression straps on either side. Now that we've looked at both of these bags individually, let's do a little side-by-side packing just to show you how much each of these bags can fit. So first we've got a white blouse, we've got a pair of white shorts, a small black tank top, small white tank top, little black dress, a couple undergarments, and a bikini. And last, we've got our pajamas. Just zip that up. Okay, so we've got our Blast backpack. Let's see how much we can fit in here. Starting off, we know we want our Kindle in this front pocket, so we'll stick that in. Our headphones, we're gonna stick in the top pocket. Stick it in here. Keys on the key leash, which is just on this bottom pocket. Our pen, we'll stick the pen in one of these little pen slots. My sleep mask, in case we want to sleep on the way to Miami. We'll stick that in there. Peak Design mobile tripod. My light, in case we want to take some pictures. Portable charger, we'll stick that in there as well. We'll just put it behind the mask. The cord in just behind the portable charger. Also going to use the pouch just to give us a bit more organization. So I'm going to take off the strap because I don't really want to use it as a crossbody. Passport in here along with my credit cards. I'm also going to stick my AirTag and tampon and cleaning wipe in here just in case. It's my little emergency kit. I've also got a second little kit with pills in case I need anything on the way. Stick that in there. My lip gloss, pretty full, so we'll zip that up and just stick this right in the front. A little lock. Got my laptop along with its travel case. So I'm gonna just stick that in here. We'll just stick this in the laptop compartment. Starting off, I'm gonna put my packing cube in here. And you can see this does take up a good amount of space, but there's still, you know, a bit of space on the bottom, not too bad. Toiletry bag, I'm gonna stick the toiletry bag on the side. Then below the toiletry bag, we're gonna stick our crossbody bag for when we go out. Doing pretty good. We wanna leave some room for our shoes, so I'm gonna leave that for now. Okay, on the other side, we're gonna keep ourselves organized. So I've got my hairbrush, we'll stick that in here. Jewelry, we'll stick that in this little pocket. My belt. My long shot bag in the larger pocket over here. Sunglasses case, that I think we can maybe just squeeze right on top. Okay, we're doing pretty good, but again, it is starting to feel a little tight. So I'm gonna strap these down. I'm gonna go. Ooh, okay, we got it. So we'll unzip this. You can see there's still a good bit of space the way we packed it. I think we're gonna be able to get these in just fine. So I've got one pair of nicer sandals and one pair of flip-flops for the beach. Okay, so we've got both pairs of shoes in here and we're just gonna slide them in. These were larger shoes, it might be more of a problem, but this just zips in really nicely. Next thing we're gonna add is our water bottle, hopefully, but I just realized we forgot to pack our beach towel, so I'm just gonna see if I can slide that in the very top. I think we can. Just slide it in. Okay, it's gonna slide in, there we go. Okay. All right, so we've got that slid in. You can see these pockets now feel pretty full. When you unzip them, it's a little tight, but it's doable. It's just a bit of a squeeze getting that Kindle out, but not the end of the world. So let's just see if we can get this water bottle to fit. Because it's stretchy, I think, oh, we're gonna just be able to do it, but you can see it looks kind of weird. It's very squeezed in there, but because it's elastic, it's working. Okay, so now that the bag's fully packed, let me show you what it looks like on. Just for reference, I am 5'8" and fairly petite, so it definitely feels a bit heavy the way it's packed right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and use the sternum strap. And just something to note with the straps right off the bat, this is the first time I've used it without using like a sweatshirt or something before I put it on, and these definitely feel a bit rough on the skin. So if you're carrying this backpack, I would definitely recommend wearing like a longer sleeve t-shirt or something just to protect your skin. This is what it looks like. And one thing to note with the way the sternum strap's fitting, at least for me, there is like, it kind of bows out here, which honestly, I haven't noticed in any of my other backpacks with sternum straps. Maybe it's a thing, maybe it's not. But I actually kind of like it because it makes me feel like I can move my arms a bit. There's not like, you know, I'm not getting that like rough material like I'm feeling right now on my shoulders. So I don't really mind it, but I think, again, it's just gonna depend on how it fits you individually. So this is how it fits me. So this is the Faro Backpack. And now we're gonna jump over to the Blast. Now we've got the Blast backpack. So let's go ahead and pack it. We've got the Blast backpack. We've got my Kindle. So I'm gonna go ahead and just stick that right here. And that just takes up pretty much the whole space, but I know exactly where it is, easy access. I'm gonna go ahead and pack this top pocket here. This is the pocket I really love when I'm traveling. It just, I feel like makes everything so easy. So I'm gonna stick my headphones in this little netted section, my sleep mask, portable charger. I'm just gonna stick that in the larger compartment. Keys, which are very important. So I'm gonna go ahead and stick those in this little pocket as well, since there's not a key leash in this one. My pen, in case we need to fill things out at immigration, so I'm gonna stick that in there as well. Hairbrush in here in case I wanna brush my hair after the flight. And I've got my little light as well as my portable tripod. Also in this top compartment, I'm gonna stick my lip gloss, sunglasses, so we know where those are, and we can grab those directly after the flight. In this side pocket, you can see it does kind of come out a little bit. So I'm gonna go ahead and put my air tag as well as my emergency medical kit in there. I feel like that's enough for there for now. If I want more later, we'll stick more in there, but I feel like with this bag compared to the other one, we have so much more space that we don't really have to cram things in too many places. I'm gonna go ahead and put my passport in one of these secret pockets. We'll stick her in there. There we go. Stick that in there. We can go ahead and move on to the inside of the bag. Let's go ahead and put in our packing cube. You can see the interior of this looks like there's not a lot of space, and then once you kind of lift it up and under, there's still a good bit. This part up on the top does take up some space in the bag, so just something to be aware of. Our makeup bag on the side, just up here. Put our jewelry in this little compartment over here. Our belt in there too, so we know where that is. Got our little clutch side. Tote bag from Long Shop. If you need a tote bag for travel, this is the best tote bag because look how small it gets. And it fits a ton, so we're gonna just squeeze that in there. Stick our beach blanket in there on top. Just gonna fit it in there. There we go. And our water bottle and laptop, and we will be ready to go. So I'm not gonna tighten this all the way because again, the shoes are gonna come up into this portion of the bag quite a bit. There we go. Okay, so let's zip this up. Stick our shoes in here. You can see plenty of space. Pairs of shoes in there, no problem. Perfect. And then we're just gonna put our laptop in the back. You can see this gets top heavy pretty quickly. So just something to be aware of. There we go, stick the laptop in there, get it buckled in. Zip that up. That's not the right zipper. There we go, zip that up. And last, we're just gonna stick our water bottle in the side. Perfect. There's still enough space. If I wanted to squeeze in a couple extra things, I could. But overall, you know, we've got everything we need. So this is the Blast backpack. And as you can see, it's definitely a bit bigger than the Faro. So I'm gonna go ahead and just hook the string strap. Overall, I find this to be much more comfortable than the Faro. For some reason, the Faro straps, like we talked about, just weren't that comfortable, especially on my skin. And this backpack, I don't know if it's just because there's maybe more padding, a slightly different mesh material, but this one feels a lot softer. I could honestly walk around with this right now and go out the door on a trip and not be as irritated as I was with the Faro backpack. Faro backpack on raw skin, I was so ready to take it off. It was not the most comfortable. That one, I would definitely say wear a longer sleeve t-shirt, protect your skin. The Blast backpack feels a little bit more luxe. It's not bothering me at all. So big difference there. So as you can see, this backpack does look a good bit larger than the Faro because it is. This isn't even the expanded version. Expanded, it's even bigger than this. So while you're flying with it, I do think it is something to kind of be aware of, that chances are they might ask you to size this one because it does look a good bit bigger versus the Faro, which looks like a little more compact, even though it is a little bit taller. Something to keep in mind, again, this is the Blast, and it is not extended at the moment. And just to show you the difference, I'm gonna go ahead now and extend it. Okay, so this is the Blast, fully extended. I'm gonna go ahead and buckle the sternum strap. You can see it doesn't really change much about the fit. You can just see there's a little bit of like extra fabric, and everything just is a little bit looser in the backpack. So not a huge difference, but again, if you're doing shopping and you're really squeezing stuff into this bag, any little bit of extra space is definitely gonna help. Now that we're at the end of the video, the question remains, which budget backpack is the winner? And for me, I prefer the Blast backpack. While I do really appreciate the Faro backpack and think it's a great option for somebody who's gonna be outdoors a lot, especially because it's got that waterproof zipper, I just gravitate toward the Blast because I like all of the external pockets and the organization. For me as a travel bag, as well as an everyday carry, this has just constantly been my go-to. I really am honestly very obsessed with it. I think for a budget backpack, it is the perfect travel backpack. That said, again, you do kind of have to keep an eye on the dimensions, especially when you're traveling and wanting to use this as a personal item. But so far, I haven't had any issues using it as a personal item, and obviously as a carry-on bag, I think you'd be fine. So the Blast is my pick as the best budget travel backpack. However, I think if you are going to be outdoors a lot, the Faro is going to be the way to go because of this waterproof zipper. It's also something that my dad pointed out, that he prefers this backpack because there's less compartments and less zippers. He likes the simplicity of the Faro. So I think on some level it does just come down to personal preference, but for me, the Blast is definitely the winner. Now that we're at the end of the video, the question remains, which of these bags is the winner for the best budget backpack? And for me, the winner is the Blast backpack. I am obsessed with just how organized I feel when using this. I love all the external pockets, and frankly, I just really like the color. For me, this bag has been great so far traveling. It worked as a personal item. However, again, double check the dimensions before you fly because it will not work as a personal item for every single airline. So it's really important that you double check. That said, it's worked really well for me so far as both a personal item flying as well as just an everyday carry. I am obsessed with how organized this makes me feel in both situations. So for me, the Blast is the winner. However, I do think if you're going to be outdoors a lot, especially if you're planning to use it as an everyday carry on the road, that the Faro might be the better option for you. That said, my dad also pointed out that he prefers the Faro because of its simplicity and the fact it's got less pockets, so he feels more organized just because there's less places to look for things, versus me, who feels more organized when I've got a pocket for everything. So depending on your personal style, I really don't think you can go wrong with either backpack. But again, for me, the Blast is definitely the winner. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video helpful. If you do decide to purchase one of these bags, I do have a link in the description box below. It is an affiliate link. It doesn't cost you anything extra and helps out my channel. I also do have a code for you as well if you want to get a little discount. So definitely check that out. And please leave a note in the comments below if there's another bag you'd like me to review. I'm always open to check out new travel luggage or travel gear. And with that, I will see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.